Welcome, my friends. Welcome to a wonderful Wednesday session for today. Today, we are going to be welcoming a number of friends of ours. We have some new students who are meant to be joining us today, and we will spend some time getting them acquainted with how things work. And then we will move into a very rapid overview of the 49 processes, all 49 of them. So that's our agenda for today. It's really to take a look at all of the 49 processes and to ensure that we got a good recollection of what is in the PMBOK guide. So let's jump into it. I call this smart project management. And project management, in order to be sensible, should be specific, should be measurable, should be achievable, should be realistic, and of course, it should be time-bound. So when you talk about being smart in your project management, you got to account for schedule, cost, scope, risk, and all the other knowledge areas. Now, those who are new haven't heard this talk about knowledge area. The talk about knowledge area is kind of new to you, but don't worry, we'll get you up to speed with what knowledge areas are. So let's advance. Okay, so for those who have not met me, I'm your buddy Phil, project management trainer and coach, and I'll be helping you through this terrain to get certified as a PMP or as a CAPM. I got certified in 2005, and since I got certified, I've been helping many different companies worldwide. Many that you see on the screen, government agencies get certified. Let's take a quick roll call and see who's in the class right now. So I can see Jackie's here, welcome. Abby's here, Adrian, Carolyn, Chris, Delita, Dinesh, Hanan. Jeff is here, welcome Jeff. So Jeff and Hanan are in the class coming up on Saturday. Johanny, I see you. Ken, Margaret, Mario is in the class as well. So good to see you here, Mario. Michelle, Margaret, Nancy, Rachel. Rachel is in the class as well. So good to see you. And Susanna. So those folks who I called out are new students, but we've got the students who've been on the journey with me from time past. So it's a pleasure to see all of you. I hope you're well. And I just want to go ahead and test the microphones, make sure you can speak to me if that is needed. So I'm going to go ahead and unmute. And if you want to unmute and say hello at the count of 3. 1, 2, 3.
Hello.
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 Hi.
Hello, Phil.
Hi.
Hello, Phil.
I can see all your voices. I can hear and see them. The microphone's coming on. I appreciate that. Well, let's talk to. I see Jackie there trying to speak from her phone. That's very cool. Thank you, Jackie. Let's talk to our friends. I can see the mic. It's kind of stuttering, but I know it's you, Jackie. So good to see you here today. All right. Let's talk to some of our new friends. So Mario, you were not here last week. Jeff, you were not here last week. Let's speak to some of our new friends. Rachel, let's hear your voices. Come on, Hanan. So let's start with, I'm just calling you at random. Let's start with Hanan. Hanan, how are you doing?
Hey Phil, how are you doing? I'm good.
Good, good. Are you looking forward to Saturday? Pedal to metal.
Yeah, I never attended any Saturdays before, so next Saturday will be my first one.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you. Jeff, how you doing? I'm glad you could join.
Thank you for the invite. Yes.
Awesome. So I'm looking forward to seeing you on Saturday. And you folks do know it's 1 to 5. Someone told me there was a typo that said 1 to 3 somewhere. It's actually 1 to 5 Eastern. Is that all right?
Yes, that'd be fine.
Cool. Pedal to metal. So has Kathy told you about the Kool-Aid?
She has, and she highly recommended me to you. So I'm
Lovely.
looking forward to it. Ready to learn and get this test behind me.
Awesome. Awesome. For real, Jeff. And, you know, I come from a similar background to what you do. Worked for Honeywell, worked a little bit in US Airways, so that industry, and trained many folks from similar industries. So I'll really be looking forward to seeing what you guys do in your project management. Very good. All right, let's talk.
Thank you.
Cool. Thank you, Jeff. Let's talk to Rachel and Mario. Who's going first? Rachel?
Good afternoon, Phil.
Hi. How you doing? I'm good. It's good to see you again or hear your voice again. You looking forward to Saturday?
I am. I'd like to get started.
Cool. So do you have a PMBOK guide?
I do.
Nice.
It arrived in the mail last Saturday.
Woo!
So.
I love it. So for those of you that don't have a PMBOK guide, you might want to go to Amazon real quick and look for the 6th edition because we are going to be using it very heavily. Yeah. I'm glad you did that, Rachel. Good on you. Very good.
Pays to be prepared.
It does, doesn't it? And you might want to start pinging some of your, I don't know, colleagues who have done this in the past. As someone who works with Paul, Bill, and Sia, and both of them, you know, they took it not too far off. I mean, it's not up to 7 months. So I don't know if you know those folks. You know them?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh,
We're
cool.
all on the same team.
Nice. All right. And I see Mario is here. Mario, can you unmute?
Hey, Phil. Yeah, good afternoon.
Hey.
How's it going?
I'm good. Good to see you, Mario. Good to hear your
Likewise.
voice. Yeah. Have you gotten your PMBOK guide too?
No. Actually, I missed the last class, so I wasn't fully aware I needed. But I'm taking note here and already looking into Amazon for the options.
Very good. Very good. Grab that from Amazon for real. Awesome. Awesome. Well, I look forward to seeing you on Saturday. And, you know, if it doesn't arrive by Saturday, don't worry. You should become a member of the PMI. In fact, everyone on the call, is there anyone from the former students who has not become a member? You should, because the exam is going to be cheaper. And then, Mario, when you are a member, you get a PDF download of the PMBOK guide for free. So,
nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you might want to. Cool. Yeah, Paul will be in support. I'm very sure he will. All right.
Sure. Thanks.
Thank you, Mario. Okay, and everyone who has been on the journey, it's a pleasure to see you here. My students who are just getting off the bus from Saturdays, you're now in Wednesdays. It's a real pleasure to have you here. So let me go ahead and I will put everyone back into some sort of classroom mode just so that we can move expediently. Thank you. And I will open up the chat for a few moments just to ensure that everyone is okay and can hear. So why don't you go ahead and just chat in how you're coping in this crazy pandemic time. I hope you're well, and I hope you and yours are well. It's a bit of a tough time for many of us, to be honest. It's crazy. I'm actually going to do a video on schools reopening. That's going to be fun. From a project management lens and from a risk management lens. Dinesh, good to see you. Oh dear. Okay. We have to go in and take a look at that, Dinesh, but it shouldn't be locked for you though. I think if you have done all of the quizzes and modules, it should be open. Susanna, indeed. I'm glad you're here. Thank you. Thank you for chatting in. Thank you, Chris. So we'll take that as a to-do to look into that, Dinesh. Actually, the mock exam should not be locked for anyone, but it's something that we'll troubleshoot later on, okay? So welcome. Pleasantries are important, right? That's why I put aside 10 minutes for that. And let's go into the introduction to PMP. And we'll get started with a little overview. Who is the PMI? The leading global association for project management. They were founded in 1969. And since they put the PMP on the map, these folks, they've been responsible for a lot of cutting edge certifications such as the PMP, the PGMP, the CAPMs. And anytime you hear me raving like a lunatic, look, I absolutely, delightfully protect what these folks have done, because without these 5 people, we would not be here today, right? So just FYI, if you hear any videos, see any videos where I seem to be antagonistic towards the PMI, I'm just trying to keep them straight. These 5 people, they pretty much put their lives into this whole thing, and I really appreciate what they did. But as you know, through the decades, people come and go and managements come and go, and some people tend to forget that what these folks did isn't a joke. I have not forgotten. It's a big, big deal. So they founded the PMI, they put project management on the map, and you heard us talk about the PMI's PMBOK guide. I was telling Mario and Rachel and Jeff and Hanan and everyone else to go do it, you know, and I think by Saturday we should be good. Everyone should have the PMBOK guide. Yeah, everyone should have it. And provides a common lexicon and a standard for project management. Okay, so let's talk very quickly about a project. You've heard people say, oh, I'm working on a project this weekend. But what really is a project? A project is a temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique product, service, or result. Projects start and end, unlike operational work, which continues throughout the life of an organization. What about the term project management? Well, it's applying the knowledge, the skills, the tools, the techniques that are available for project management to those projects to deliver a deliverable. So these are base definitions, but why do we authorize projects? To fulfill real needs. That's the summary. Market demand, organizational need, customer requests, technological advance, legal requirements, social needs. These are all reasons why projects are authorized. There's also a term program. I'm sure some of you in your firms, you use the term program. A program is a collection of 2 or more projects managed in a coordinated way to attain benefits and control that would not be available by managing them individually. So if you manage the program disjointedly, like one project here, not good. But if you manage it as a cohesive program, you're able to focus benefits and control. For example, a program that has got project A, project B, project C, and a sub-program, they all work together to give you a benefit, a macro benefit. So that's why we work on programs. Program management is the coordinated management of one or more related programs. So you could have a program manager managing many programs. You could have a program manager managing 1 program or 2, it really depends. But as you go through the PMBOK guide, I want you to be familiar with the lingo. If you ever come across anything you don't understand, just pause, okay, and try and figure it out before moving ahead, or send an email, you know, to me, and I'll be more than happy to get you an answer. You've also heard the term operations, probably. Operations do not end, unlike projects. Projects end, but operations, that is the ongoing endeavor undertaken to support the business. There's another concept in project management that looks at project influences. What influenced your project to set up a station outside your office where there's someone with a temperature gauge checking your temperature as you go into work, making sure you're wearing a mask right now? What informed that? Well, it's a project influence. You could look at that little endeavor as a project, but what influenced it is EEFs, enterprise environmental factors. Think about it like this. Anything external to your project that influences your project is an enterprise environmental factor. So we have external influences, but we also have internal influences. And in the PMBOK guide, we go into these influences in more detail, but this is just a quick reminder for you that as you study project management in the lens of the PMI, you need to be aware of things that influence your project. So coronavirus is an external EF, right? What about the state of the market right now? It's almost deplorable in some industries. I mean, oil and gas was shaky and it's struggling for dear life. That is an external EEF. But let's talk about an internal EEF. What is an internal EEF? An internal enterprise environmental factor is one that is internal to the firm, such as the availability of a certain project management information system or the lack thereof. So if your organization has robust systems and robust infrastructure and they are well connected, you could look at that as an internal EEF. So anything that is internal to the firm, like infrastructure, project management information systems, also your organization's culture, the way they think, the way they behave, open door policy. It's a factor, it's an internal factor. Closed door policy, Theory X management, where people are suspicious of you all the time in the company. It's an internal EF. You get what I'm saying? These are important. You'll encounter these on Saturday. Those of you who are new, those of you who have been on the journey, you already remember this, right? And then we have something called OPAs, Organizational Process Assets. Have you ever worked for a company where nothing is defined? It's chaos, it's a free-for-all. People are doing what they like because they don't have processes, procedures, and guidelines, right? So the OPAs are processes and procedures. That is an organizational process asset. It's an asset because we invested time and money in creating these standard operating procedures. So we call it an OPA. But we also have something called the corporate knowledge base, like all the history of projects from time gone by and those vendors or sellers who were a nightmare to deal with. You document them in a little book of bad vendors or sellers, and you put that in your corporate knowledge base. But we call it an organizational process asset. So just a few things to think about, all right? So talking about the internal enterprise environmental factors, we call these internal EEFs, and we have a mnemonic: only great individuals inspire resources every day. So we have the organizational culture, the G stands for geographic distribution of facilities, the I stands for infrastructure, the other I for information technology software, the R for resource policies, procedures, and availability, and the E for employee capability. What can your employees do? Have they been trained? Are they good? Can they function in the world of, let's say, earned value management and stuff like that? Okay? By the way, earned value is a way of managing cost on a project, and some companies are very much into that. I know Jeff knows what I'm talking about because his company is, but not every company is. So if your company is bidding on a government project and they say, you must have EVM capability. If you don't have EVM capability, what is that going to do to you? It's going to disqualify you, right? So it's right there on the screen. Only great individuals inspire resources every day. I would advise you to take a screenshot of it if you want to remember it. Only great individuals inspire resources every day. All right, now the next mnemonic is for external EEFs. Right there on the screen again. My senator legalized candy and granola for patients. I had to change this mnemonic because it was actually something else. It was something to do with 420. So I've taken it out. So anyway, the M stands for marketplace conditions. S for social and cultural influences and issues. L for legal restrictions. C for commercial databases. A for academic research. G for government or industry standards. F for financial consideration. And P for physical environmental elements. Now, look, I just want to let you know, those of you who are new to this, I do not expect you to cram this on day one or to know this on day one. I'm just showing it to you to give you a heads up, okay? Just a heads up. So to break it down very simply for you, external enterprise environmental factors are outside of your control. Delita's laughing at me. Okay. I'm trying to keep it, you know, I don't know, PG, I don't know who's listening, so I'm using code. But that is your mnemonic, okay? And take, Ken, let's not go there today, Ken. Let's not go into the original. Let's not go to the original. Oh dear, you guys are cracking me up. Okay, so organizational process assets is processes and procedures and the corporate knowledge base. And if you see a little pop-up on the screen, it's only because I am chatting with you in the chat, okay? So in chapter 2, they go into a lot of information about this. Again, my aim is not to have you cram all of this, but I just want you to understand that projects are influenced, based on the enterprise environmental factors, and projects are run with the organizational process assets in mind, okay? So the organizational process assets, or OPAs, are very important because you need to have processes and procedures in place for project management, or you're flying by the seat of your pants, which isn't very good. Then the next piece here, the corporate knowledge base. Again, it's just background information that you can take, keep in your little gig bag. And when you start studying in earnest, those of you who are starting the course on Saturday, all of this stuff will make sense to you. But these are reminders, okay? So I want you to open up your PMBOK guide, and like in chapter 2, not everyone, just those folks who have been here for a while. Chapter 2 is where you need to be focused to make sure you get this into you once and for all. Okay, now we're done with that. We're moving into some fun stuff, and I call it PMP Exam Rapid, because in the next 40, 50 minutes, 40 or 38 to be precise, we're going to be covering all of the processes in the PMBOK guide. So you might have noticed I was kind of giving you the top of the waves regarding chapter 1 and 2, a little bit of chapter 3, but I really want you to get your bearings straight about where we're going, okay? So here's the philosophy of the PMI. On every project, there are groups of things. Now, I want you to think about a class of students with birthdays, January to December. Just because you have a set of folks whose birthdays are in January, that doesn't mean they're more important than people whose birthdays are in December. You get what I'm saying? Just because you have someone whose birthday is in June doesn't mean that those whose birthdays are in November are not important. Why am I saying this? Because they are just categories, groupings of things. That's all. And that's how you need to approach these process groups I'm going to show you. They're just groupings. It's not to say that one group is more important than the other. And it's not to say that one group comes before another all the time. Think about it. My birthday is in December. Your birthday is in January. Who comes first? Is it December? Is it January? Think about it. Who comes first? Because I have an answer for you. It doesn't always follow. The person who was born December 1941 comes before the person who was born January 1981. You get what I'm saying? So jokes apart, you got to look at this as groupings. That's it. Groupings. Don't get all sentimental about, but initiating comes first. Every single step of the project, no, you might be surprised. All right, just hold on to that thought. So there are 5 process groups in project management. They are initiating, planning, executing, monitoring and controlling, and closing. So what do these mean? Initiating is where you kick off or authorize the project or the phase. So initiating is really looking into the project being authorized, or maybe the project is already authorized, but you authorize phases in your company. You do not allow phase 2 to happen unless phase 1 has been well closed out and you have a phase gate, and then you initiate phase 2. So hold on to that thought, because you could initiate a project or phase, and there are a lot of trick questions about that. Planning. Planning is done typically once initiating has ended. But did you ever think about a contract that you're trying to bid on? You don't know if you're going to win the contract, but you do a whole bunch of front-end planning. And then you submit your proposal, and then 10 months later, you hear back. What were you doing when you were assembling the proposal? You were actually doing some front-end planning. You see why you need to think about this with an open mind? You cannot just say, oh, I never plan until I initiate. No. In reality, planning may have started even when you were submitting a proposal. So I'm trying to expand your mind in thinking about these concepts, okay? So typically you initiate, then you plan. There might be instances where these are not done in strict rotation, you know, and then there's executing where you execute the plan. So one thing's for sure, if you are executing without a plan, could be dangerous. Hopefully you've got some organizational process asset that gives you an idea of how to begin to execute a few things without absolutely having a plan. An example for those of you who are already entrenched in the PMBOK guide is pre-assignment. Pre-assignment is in executing, but a lot of times when pre-assignment happens, it's even before the ink dries on a contract. Just think about that for a second. And that's why I tell you, these things are just groupings. Don't get all sentimental about this must happen first. Now, within reason and sensibilities, it is initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, controlling, and closing. But just remember, in real life, it could be out of order. Monitoring and controlling happens right from the get-go. The moment a project is authorized, you as the project manager, you should be thinking, my stakeholders, how do I ensure that they are happy? How do I ensure that they're getting what they need on day 2? So you don't have to wait for a big old dog and pony planning show before you get into monitoring and controlling. Stuff to think about. And lastly, closing. Bear in mind, you could either be closing out a project or you could be closing out a phase in the project, okay? So to make this stick a little bit better, I would like to invite you to open up your PMBOK guide to page 555. Let's go to page 555 in the PMBOK guide. It's something I want to show you. Page 555. And we will read it together. Okay, page 555, it says at the top, process groups are not project phases. Second paragraph. If the project is divided into phases, the processes in the process groups interact within each phase. So I don't want you calling the process groups phases because they're not, they're just groups. It is possible that all process groups could be represented within a phase. So think about it. You could have, on a mundane project like baking a cake, you could have, all right, ingredients, initiate ingredients, plan ingredients, execute ingredients, monitor and control ingredients, close ingredients. Then you could have mix ingredients. Then you could have bake cake. And within each of those silos, you could have initiate oven, turn on oven, and so on. That's all they're trying to tell you. So for every phase in a project, you could have the 5 process groups interacting inside. That's what they're trying to tell you. All right, let's move on. It says, it is possible that all process groups could be represented within a phase as illustrated in figure 1-5 below, as projects are separated into distinct phases such as concept, development, feasibility study, design, prototype, build, or test, and so on. In each of the process groups, processes in each of the process groups are repeated as necessary in each phase until the completion criteria for that phase has been satisfied. So what you're seeing there in that image is showing you that the 5 process groups, my friends, do not interact. They don't interact like this. Initiate, then plan, then execute, then monitor and control. No, fail. Don't think like that. The reality of it is you could have red, initiating, green, planning. You see there's overlap? Blue, executing. See that? Dark red, monitoring and controlling, and a lighter blue for closing. So look, it looks like a bowl of spaghetti. It's all interwoven, mixed up, integrated. That's how you need to think about project management, my friends. Not about 1, then 2, then 3, then 4. No. Big fail. All right. So we've talked about grouping students by the day they were born or the months they were born, but you could also group students by height. You could group them by favorite food. You could group them by which state they originally from, which country they're originally from, all that stuff. So when you do things like that, you have multiple groupings. And that's why in project management, we can slice and dice project management processes by process group or by knowledge area. The knowledge areas are integration, scope, schedule, cost, quality, resources, communications, risk, procurement, and stakeholder management. So why are we doing all this? Because we want to make sure that you put the right label on the process. Don't put the salt in the sugar jar or the pepper in the powdered milk jar. It's important that we know what each process is. So what do all of these mean? Very quickly, let's cover the top of the waves of the knowledge areas. Integration is integrating the whole project. Scope is scoping out like a telescope what needs to be done, identifying what exactly needs to be done to get the deliverable. Schedule management is putting the timeline of the project together. Cost management is understanding the budget. Quality management is understanding which quality standards and requirements should be in place and deciding how to meet them. Resource management is managing resources, human equipment, materials, supplies. Communication management is managing communications. Risk management is managing uncertainty that could impact the project, and procurement management is managing contracts on the project. Last but not least, we have stakeholder management. Now, again, to give you a very good idea of what we are discussing, I want you to go to the PMBOK guide, and this is a check. Hey, this is a check for the existing folks who have been on the journey and heard me say it a gazillion times. Do you know your page 25? I guess we're going to do a little test. We're going to find out. All right. So the little test I want to give you is on the knowledge areas. Can you type into me, just using an abbreviation for each knowledge area? What are the knowledge areas? For those who have been on the journey, type into me. I want to make sure you got the knowledge areas down pat before I unleash my next little plan. Do you know all your knowledge areas well? All 10 of them? I guess we're going to find out. Don't type in the public because everyone will know the answer. So type into me privately. Type into me oh dear, Jackie has just done what I said don't do. All right, well, that's the end of that. Let's just go back to our PowerPoint. Thank you very much for the fun. It was fun while it lasted. I wanted to interrogate you. But, okay, it's all good. So the 10 knowledge areas are integration, scope, schedule, cost, quality, resources, communications, risk, procurement, and stakeholder management. But I already asked you to turn to page 25, so the cat was out of the bag anyway. I'm just kidding, don't sweat it. All right, so let's go to page 25, those of you that have the PMBOK guide. When you take a look at page 25, you see what happens when we intersect those groups, process groups, and the knowledge areas. And I'm hoping that everyone on the call, except our new students, can draw out page 25. I'm really hoping you can, okay? I'm gonna give you a few more quizzes on these things after we very rapidly run through page 25. So let me put page 25 up and give you a little reminder about how it looks if you have forgotten. I really hope you're doing this daily. This is something I would have expected daily. All right, I expect you to do this daily. So there's a mnemonic, and Jackie typed it in, I believe think Susanna typed it in as well. And we have another of our friends here. Shamer, welcome. Good to have you here. Hopefully we'll be able to chat a bit at the end if we're able to finish on time. So welcome, welcome. So we're talking about the 10 knowledge areas, and the funny mnemonic on the screen, I saw 6 chipmunks quietly roasting coffee, reading poetry stories. That's the 10 knowledge areas going down. All right, integration, scope, schedule, and so on. Okay. Now, another feature of these classes that I would like to introduce you to is the poll. So if I launch a poll like this, you can actually move the poll around the screen. You don't need to keep it in the middle. If it suddenly jumps at you and you're like, oh, I want to read the question, just move it to the left, right, up, or down. Okay, and you'll be able to read it properly. But here's the question for the poll. So based on what I just taught you, how many knowledge areas are there? And I usually do a countdown like 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And that's to give you heads up that I'm about to end the poll. Okay? So when I get to 3, like from 5, the best thing to do is choose anything. You know the cool thing? It's anonymous. No one knows. No one knows who voted what. See? So you can vote anything. All right. 3, 2, and 1. And some folks may be on a device where they have a pop-up block. That's all right. You can always chat the answer into me. Some of you on iPads, I understand. Okay? All righty then. 3, 2, and 1. Very, very good. Awesome. You all got it right. And then I share the results, but then again, it's anonymous. Very good. Okay. So there are 10 knowledge areas. Awesome. So my friends, if we put those knowledge areas on the left and we put the process groups at the top, this forms what you have on page 25. Okay, I'm going to zoom in because I really want you to be aware of what I'm talking about. You see this tabular grid on page 25? Yes. So those of you starting new, this needs to be something you aspire to master by going through all the processes, okay, as often as you can, because the more you go through it, the more it's going to stick. All right, so we're going through all of the processes. It's very rapid, and I invite you to take a blank piece of paper. I'm just going to give you maybe a couple of words that will explain each of the 49 processes that are in the white area in the screen that you're about to see. So that is the same page 25, but right now we've talked about the process groups. We don't need to talk about those anymore. That's fine for today. We've talked about the knowledge areas. Okay, that's fine for today. What I am going to focus on, however, is what is in this area. And I'm going to give you liberating words. I don't want you lugging around tons of information in your head. I just want to give you a very, very, very short description of them. And Ken says, Phil has a video about how to memorize those mnemonics for the processes. Very good point, Ken. In fact, why don't we just go to that one? You see, Ken is one of my MVPs, and he's my rules collector. Some of you don't know what rules I'm talking about. Ken is my rules collector. So let me go ahead and share this. As you can see on the screen, there is a bunch of mnemonics. As I go through these processes, these mnemonics will help you kind of fine-tune your recall of all of these things. So there's so many of them, You got to keep them straight. And one of the ways to keep them straight is by using mnemonics, okay? So for example, the first one up there says David. Well, if you go to the actual image, David is actually developed project charter. You get what I'm saying? Good. So let's go back to the original image. There's the original image, and we're going to rapidly go through this. Are you ready? This is a sprint. It's very quick. All right. I'll zoom into the chart and just follow along. So we're going to start off at the top left where initiating and integration intersect. And there we have something called develop project charter. You see it? The key word for this is authorization. This is where you authorize the project using a document called a project charter. Okay, good. Going down, because we're going down the image. Going down the image, you can see over here, we have another process, identify stakeholders. This is where you identify anyone who the project could affect or anyone that could be affected by the project. Okay? Anyone who is interested in the project. Okay, good. Let's go to the top. Planning. We have develop project management plan right here at the top. This is where you assemble all of the plans for schedule, cost, scope, risk, anything. Think about this as the collection of all the plans into one cohesive plan. So you could use the term collect all the plans, put them together. Okay? Good. Now, if we zoom out, which will probably be the best view because I don't want anyone getting dizzy, I'm just going to zoom out and I'm going to go through them down the list like this. All right, plan scope management. We create a plan for how to manage scope and requirements. Collect requirements. We actually collect the requirements. Define scope. This is where we define the work that has to be done to deliver the deliverable. Create WBS. Now this one needs a visual because some folks may not have seen a work breakdown structure. So I've got to show it to you so it sticks. A work breakdown structure is a hierarchical decomposition of the project. In this illustration of a WBS, it's one for a house. And you can see that it's broken down like a family tree, but it's really done to organize the work and identify all the work that has to be done. Okay? So the process where we do this, we call it create WBS. That's it. When you've gotten your WBS, at that point, you can begin thinking about the schedule. You might have even started thinking about it earlier, but there should be a process where you plan, how are we going to develop a schedule? What kind of schedule are we going to use? Is it going to be a detailed schedule? Or maybe it's going to be a milestone schedule. Maybe we're just going to have milestones. Or maybe we're going to have a very elaborate schedule, like in Microsoft Project, something like this, with 2,000 lines, 10,000 lines, 20,000 lines. But you don't just wake up and start building a schedule, right? You need to plan. And that's why we have plan, schedule management. And then we define the activities. You make a list of what needs to be done, and then you sequence it. You put it in order, right? And then after you've put this in order, you have an idea of how long each activity will take. We call that estimate activity durations. See? And then when you have done those pieces and maybe factored in how good the people working with you are, all of that stuff, you move into develop schedule. And when you've developed your schedule, you have your schedule. Boom, end of story, you got your schedule. We call it develop schedule, you see? So going back to the list of things, you then begin to think about cost. You could have started thinking about cost earlier. Maybe there's a contract and it says, this is a contract for 3 million. Well, you already thought about cost. But this is a good place to begin asking, how are we going to decompose this budget into the different tasks? So you estimate cost for each task, and if you haven't already determined the overall budget, well, now you can roll everything up to a final total amount. Make sense? Very good. All right. The next thing you think about is quality, the quality standards to adhere to. The next thing you think about is resources. You begin planning, how are we going to acquire those resources? Person X is a very good resource. How are we going to get them? Person Y, how are we going to get them? Oh, equipment A, that is the equipment we need for the project. How are we going to get it? You got to plan. And then you got to estimate how much resources you need. We call it estimate activity resources. You see? Doesn't it sound like business as usual? Doesn't it? It does. I want to hear from one of our friends who is new. Chat in the chat box. Does this make sense? Does it sound basic? Chat in to us. Chat in. And Margaret will help you, Shamir, to navigate to the LMS. It's all in the email. You got to look at the first email with all the details. So chat into me. Anyone who's new, is what I'm saying making sense? Because it's the holy grail of the PMI. Thank you, Angela. Awesome. Welcome, by the way. I did not see you. Welcome, welcome. Thank you, Mario. Thank you, Shamir. Okay, Hanan, does it make sense? Jeff, makes sense? Rachel, good. I'm glad you are here. Absolutely. Very good. I'm glad it makes sense, Mario. Oh, we will get into detail. I'm glad that this at a high level makes good sense. Good. All right, let's proceed further. I'll be a bit quicker now. I know it's making sense. And then you want to plan your communications. So we have plan communications management. And the next knowledge area, bear in mind, I'm covering them in a sequence, but in the real world, you do not do this in rotation of integration, scope, schedule. No. Some of it does align in order. Some of it on a project could, but not every project. Some projects, the first thing the stakeholders want to talk about is risk. Some projects, the first thing they want to talk about is communications. So just bear that in mind, all right? So the next thing here is risk. You got to plan how to manage uncertainty. Then you got to identify what are those uncertain events that could happen. Corona, back in January, people were saying, oh, it would have gone by June. But some people said, what if it hasn't? That's risk management. What if it hasn't? What if it hasn't? You know, like schools reopening. I told you I'm going to do a video for schools reopening from a risk perspective. You always got to think about uncertainty. You got to identify the uncertainties. Then you got to plan and put things in place and be responsible, right? The next thing after you identify risks, you do a qualitative risk analysis. You rank them. You score them, right? It could be a relative scoring. Oh, that's big. This is not that big. Oh, this has a high probability. This doesn't. And then when you've done a ranking, you go to those that have a higher ranking, and those are the ones you want to quantify. Think about quantification as putting a price tag or a dollar amount or some quantitative measure that indicates the enormity of the risk. That's perform quantitative risk analysis. And then you plan your responses based on, again, you're going to rank those that have a high dollar value. Let me cut to the chase and show you a quick image because you all seem to be in the zone and some of you use this stuff already. So why not? Let's just jump into it. So in quantitative, what you do is you think about the probability, you think about the impact, you multiply those, you get something called the expected monetary value or risk magnitude. Think about it like a quantification measure. The bottom line is each risk is quantified and you've got an idea of the quantification. From there, you will get an aggregate effect. If you do this with the right software, you do this with the right method, like a Monte Carlo, you're going to get an aggregate effect. And that's what we're looking for. How much exposure does the project have in totality? That is what quantitative risk analysis is all about. And then when you get done with that, you plan responses. Again, you can see this is the risk. And then we've got a response. Oh, have extra peer reviews if the technology could be at risk of being more difficult than anticipated. Okay, have more peer reviews. So what do we call that strategy? We call it mitigate. You see, this is the line of thinking. Now, I'm going to show you all of this when we get into the course proper, but those who have been through it, they could probably give you a whole lecture on this because they already know the details, but you will learn the details. All right, so you plan risk responses, and then the next two in planning is plan procurement management, planning how to manage the procurement, and then we have plan stakeholder engagement, okay? This is planning how to keep your stakeholders engaged. All right, you're done with the most difficult stuff. Everything else is gonna go, I can guarantee you, 5 minutes, we're gonna be done. So follow very close. All right, direct and manage project work is the overall management of the project, integrating everything. Manage project knowledge is collecting and using lessons learned on the project. So on some projects, people collect lessons learned, but don't use them. Well, they're not doing a good job of manage project knowledge because you should be disseminating the lessons learned to everyone in the company that is concerned, encouraging them to use what you've learned. The next one is manage quality. What do we do here? Check in the process. It's like going through a fast food restaurant and you're checking the work to make sure people are wearing gloves, wearing PPE, I don't know, wearing whatever they should be wearing. And you're not looking at the product. You're not looking at the burger. You're looking at the process being carried out and making sure it's been done well. That is manage quality. That is different from its neighbor, control quality, where we check the burger. We're not checking the burger here in manage quality. Manage quality is checking the process. Control quality is checking the actual product, all right? Still going down the list, acquire resources is acquiring the resources you need for the project, human, equipment, material, supplies, facilities. Develop team is developing your team, sending them for training, team building, equipping them, getting them to synergize. Manage team is giving the team feedback. Manage communications is the process where we actually communicate a number of things. We communicate status, we communicate reports, and so on. Implement risk responses is where we are carrying out the response that we said we would to the risk. So if the response is, we're going to get a bunch of people as a redundant, to put some redundancy into our resource force, then that is implement risk responses. When you acquire those resources, you just implemented your risk response plan, okay? Conduct procurements is a number of things. It's advertising that you've got a procurement that you want to contract out to a vendor or seller, then it's negotiating and it's awarding a contract as well. That is different from managing the contract when it's gone live. That happens in control procurement. You get it? Negotiate, award a contract. This one is manage the contract. You see, and the reason why I'm showing you this and this, and then this and this is, you know, people often get them confused. Manage communications is communicating. Monitor communications is checking to make sure you did a good job of the communications and to see if you need to tweak anything. See, Conduct procurements is awarding the contract. Control procurements is managing and checking to make sure the contract is going according to plan. Get it? Manage stakeholder engagement is engaging your stakeholder. Monitor stakeholder engagement is checking to ensure your stakeholder is engaged. See? One is doing, one is checking, one is doing, one is checking, one is doing, one is checking. As simple as that. All right, let's go to monitor and control. So monitor and controlling, we have monitor and control project work. This is where we create reports that monitor the entire project. We call them work performance reports. Hold on to that thought. Perform integrated change control is where we are funneling all our change requests. This is such an important process. In fact, all change requests, they are processed through perform integrated change control. Keep that in mind. Validate scope, that is where your customer checks the final product to ensure that that product, service, whatever it is accepted. So we get an accepted deliverable if there's a stamp of approval from there. Control scope is where you, the project manager, prevents gold plating. What is gold plating? The addition of extras without proper control. We call that control scope. All right, the rest are very basic. Control schedule, check in and managing the schedule to ensure people stay on it. Control cost, check in the budget, the cost baseline to ensure people do not deviate from it. And if they do, then you carry out necessary actions to bring them back in alignment. The same for control quality, check in the product. Remember, we talked about that. Control resources is not with reference to people. Control resources is about physical resources. You don't control people in this world of PMI, but you check your physical resources and you ensure they were used as planned. Monitor communications. This is where we ensure the communications is going according to plan. We make tweaks if it isn't. Monitor risk. This is where we keep our eye on the risk to make sure they have not changed. And if they have changed, then we need to update our risk register and other documentation. Control procurements, like I said, it's managing the contract, checking to make sure that it's going according to plan. And it's also where you close out each procurement. The last one here is monitor stakeholder engagement. As I said, it is check-in to ensure your stakeholders are engaged. And last but not least, we have close project or phase. I mentioned this in the very beginning. It is closing out either the entire project or a phase in the project. Okay. And that, my friends, is page 25. It's a very important part of your study. Next week, we're going to begin studying roughly 10 to 12 processes from this assortment. So for those of you that are on the journey, we're providing a framework where you can go through 10 a week. My expectation is by the end of 4 weeks, your studying is done, you're ready to take your exam. Those who have been on the journey. For those of you who are just coming, well, just enjoy the ride. It's going to be kind of like a preview of what we do on Saturdays. So coming on Wednesday actually helps you to get ready for Saturday better. All right. So thank you very much for joining me. It's the end of the session. I'm going to stop the recording. For those of you who are new, don't run away just yet. I've got a quick question to ask you. All right. So everyone else, if you need to hop off, thank you very much. I'll see you next week.